Hi everyone, hope you all are doing well. I appreciate you taking some time to check out the latest video. Today I'm wanting to do a real quick kind of overview as to like some of the different fishing lines that I use for throwing the big swim baits. This is a topic that I've personally kind of dove into a little bit. Where I live, and most of my local waters have very clear water. At certain times of the year, you could have excess of 20 feet visibility to the bottom. So line visibility was always one of the things that kind of kept drawing its attention to me. Is the bait being seen? Is the line being seen in the water? Is the fish looking at it and they're, turning away due to the line? So what I decided to do is I've experimented with some lines and I've kind of come up with what I personally like. And by no means is this the only way that you can fish them. This is just my personal opinion and my personal preference for how I fish them. And before we kind of dive into that, if you have any interest in the baits, if you'd like to, check them out or anything like that, please reach out to me over social media with Facebook or Instagram. Also, email me at the link here in my bio for the email. But I wanted to just give y'all an overview and kind of we'll see how that goes. But let's start out with probably the most common line that you'll find on my reels. And that is the McCoy Extra Clear fishing line. This is in 15-pound test. But so how I got kind of looking into all this was it actually started with a separate line. It started with the Seaguar 20-pound fluorocarbon line. As many of you all know, Butch Brown is probably considered to be honestly, he's probably the best trophy bass fisherman in the world, by my opinion at least. He's caught more double-digit bass than anyone documented. And he recommended throwing Seaguar Braze X. So I picked up some Seaguar Braze X and I do really like the line. For a fluorocarbon line, I've never had any issues with it. I've never had any breaks. I've never cast off a bait, knock on wood, with Seaguar Braze X. But with that said, so what I wanted to do was find a line that was a little bit cheaper. And that kind of sent me down a rabbit hole of looking into these different lines. So when I researched some through Swimbait Universe, Swimbait Underground, reading a couple of forums and different articles, one of the common themes was copolymer fishing line. So, and monofilament. I had already tried braid, so I had tried the Power Pro Max Quattro. I've tried that. It wasn't for me. It may be perfect for you and you may love it and be great with it. It just was not personally for me, and I personally would feel that the most forgiving of all of these lines, especially for beginners, which I still consider myself a beginner. There's a lot to this I'm learning and don't know, and I've been at this for about 3 years now, maybe 4. It's been a little bit of a a learning experience, and there's a learning curve to everything, and seemingly big swim baits have a little bit more of a learning curve to them, simply because you don't get the sheer number of bites that you might get with another bait. But regardless, I'm digressing and going into a different rabbit hole, but staying on point with line. It started with the Seaguar Braze X, and in particular, what I started noticing was the difference in lines company to company to company vary as far as the pound test. So what I started doing, and I actually made an Excel spreadsheet for this, and if I can, I'll try to figure out a way to either provide a snapshot or something like that of that table. But what I started doing was comparing not necessarily the millimeter, but the actual diameter of the lines. So I could find a monofilament or a copolymer line that was strong. I've never had any issues with copolymer not being strong, and I know that if anyone's ever fished P-line, copolymer fishing line, you'll know it's near impossible seemingly to break. Even the low poundage of around 6 pound test, which I think is the smallest that P-line makes, at least based on the I guess the type that I purchase. So with that, what I ended up doing is I made this Excel spreadsheet and came up with all these different diameters, and I completely ignored 20 pound, 25 pound, 12 pound, ignored it. And I focused solely on the line diameter, basing everything on the Seaguar AbrazeX. What I found was that, just like I kind of alluded to, all the companies are different. So 20 pound for McCoy, for example, 20 pound for McCoy is 0.018 inch diameter. Okay, 20 pound Seaguar, and I hope that focuses in on the camera, is a diameter of 0.016. I don't know if that makes a bit of a difference to a fish, but I can personally feel it with my fingers. If I use my thumb and my index finger, you can feel the difference in thickness. The Seaguar fluorocarbon is definitely a thinner line than the McCoy. Not a bad thing, it's just the difference. So what kind of got me going on this was, how do I keep all of my lines pretty well the same? Okay, so the next thing that I did was I started branching down, and I went to the 15 pound McCoy. And I like it really well. Personally, that's the majority of my line. I use, and you can tell, I've still got a full spool of 20 pound, and I've also got another 20 pound in the house that I use right now. And then you got my 15 pound that, you know, my spool is about half empty. This is probably, well, I don't think probably is really the right word for it. This is the most used line that I personally use. You know, you can buy these bulk 900 yard spools. You can re-spool your reels cheap. You don't have to spend a fortune having to go to the fluorocarbon line, which fluorocarbon has its place. I do use fluorocarbon, but like I said in my previous rod and reel setup video, I try to use that mainly with my soft baits, and that's only if I'm really wanting to crawl a Huddleston on the bottom and I want the line to help the bait stay on the bottom. With my glide baits, I do use fluorocarbon occasionally in the wintertime if I'm trying to sink the bait maybe 5 feet down. It just helps it get down and stay down. Just imagine it like it's a jerk bait. If you're fishing a glide bait, think about it like a jerk bait, or think about it like a topwater. Don't necessarily think about the line that I have to use fluorocarbon for glide baits, I have to use copolymer for my topwater, or braid to leader with my topwater. Experiment. But what I found is, unless I'm really trying to sink the bait, I can stay so much cheaper with the copolymer line. And I've been using the McCoy, and I really like the McCoy, so I'll probably stick with the McCoy. But I do use other line too. It's not just the McCoy. I do have the P-line CXX extra strong in just clear 12 pound. And once again, so the 12 pound of P-line is 0.0148 inches. Okay, the 15 pound of McCoy is 0.015 inch diameter line. So you're kind of seeing that all these lines, we have a 12 pound line, a 15 pound line, and a 20 pound line that are all three different. They are all three the same inch diameter relatively, and they're all three completely different pound test lines. So experiment with it and find out what works for you. But what I found was basing it on the Seaguar Brazex, which, you know, when I was starting out, I did listen to a lot of the Butch Brown seminars, a lot of Butch Brown's, you know, discussions, as well as like Mike Gilbert with Working Class Zero, trying to learn as to what's the good, you know, what works, what is the thing that some of these successful bass fishermen, trophy bass fishermen with the big swim baits have used. That was kind of the, you know, the gold standard, as you know, as we call it, is the Seaguar Brazex, based upon what they were using. So I tried it, okay, I liked it, then started branching out and looking into these other lines, and frankly just looking for a cheaper option that if I needed to replace line, I could do it more cost effective. You know, fluorocarbon is expensive line, and I know, I see their point of, hey, if I'm gonna go and buy, you know, spend all this time out on the water looking for the fish of a lifetime, I guess honestly, the cost is worth it. You're one of, I mean, a 10 pound, what's a 10-pound bass worth to you? And I see their point, but at the same time, if you can get by with a P-line copolymer line or a McCoy copolymer line, has a little bit of stretch, not stretch to the point of just standard old-fashioned monofilament, but it has a little bit of stretch. So it's a little bit more forgiving if you're new to a bait caster. Well, if you're new to just throwing big swim baits, they do come with their own learning curve as far as how to cast them, just because of their sheer size. And I know that many of you, if you are kind of in that beginning stage of the swim baits, you'll definitely figure out exactly what I mean really quickly. And you know, I don't consider myself anywhere near to be a good bait caster fisherman. I know how to throw one, but you know, everyone has a bird's nest or you know, a knot come up in the line, and then if you don't have some sort of line forgiveness, there went your bait that you spent X amount of dollars, and it could be anything. It could be anything from like a River to Sea S-Waver that costs like $20 all the way up to you know, $1,000 Hinkle trout. It doesn't matter. Whatever the case is, if that line snaps, the bait is likely gone. So especially for beginning, learning, I would highly recommend using a copolymer line. That would be my personal recommendation. You know, I'm not sponsored by any company, so I'm just giving you personally what I use. I haven't had any issues with the McCoy. I haven't had any issues with P-line. I haven't had any issues with Seaguar. And that's just personally what I've used so far. I think I've used the Berkeley Big Game 30-pound. That was a bit thick, in my opinion, for my preference, especially after I kind of got used to throwing the swim baits. But if you want to feel confident and less likely that you're going to actually break the line, try 30-pound. I think you can get it like at Walmart for really cheap for a big bulk spool. Gain confidence, feel good about throwing a swim bait, and then if you want to reduce your line size, you can. But it's just an idea, and give it some thought. But you know, I appreciate you taking some time to check out this video. If you have any questions about any of these, you know, my trial and error with line sizes, you know, as a side note to that, even throwing 12-pound test with a big swim bait, and I've went up to about 4 ounces on a swim bait, I've yet to actually break a swim bait off on 12-pound test, P-line. And I will emphasize that 12-pound test P-line, because if trying like a 12-pound test in VizX, a BrazeX, you are going to reduce that line diameter, which would be a thinner line, likely to be a weaker line, in my mind. But that's just something to think about, that rather than comparing the company's pound rating, compare their actual diameters. Like I said, I've yet to break off a swim bait throwing 12-pound test P-line, but it's got the exact same diameter as a 15-pound McCoy. and it has the same exact line diameter, or almost identical to a Seaguar Abrazex. So comparing line to line to line in a diameter size, they're identical. So I hope you found this video useful, and if you have, please like the video, comment down below if you have any questions, if you have any thoughts, and you know what? If you have any personal favorites for your own personal big swim bait fishing line, whether that be, Izorline, Seaguar, Stren, whatever your personal preference is, drop it down below. I'd love to hear what your preference is on, big swim baiting line. I haven't tried everything, and I'm always open to trying new lines, new rod and reels too. So if you have any preferences on like what do you like to throw, please give that down below. And please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I do really appreciate it. And feel free to check me out on Facebook, Instagram, or email me if you have any questions about the baits or about purchasing a bait. And I thank you very much for your time. As always, I'm going to try to get a video out a week, and hopefully I can get those out on Monday night. But if not, I'm going to try to get one per week. But appreciate your time, and I hope y'all have a great day. Thank you. Bye-bye.